G'day mates, Jackaroo Turo here, and on this channel I focus on Australian Aborigines, their languages, cultures, history, and so on. And this video is part of a series where I look at the verbs of Australian Aboriginal languages, predominantly at the verbs of languages in the big Pama-Nyungan language family. And I have come to tense, aspect and mood marking, TAM for short, in these languages. Let's recapitulate a little bit what this is. Tense marking, tense endings, locate situations in relation to some other point in time, usually the time of speaking. Aspect has been described as different ways of viewing the internal temporal constituency of a situation. And in previous videos we have discussed past tense combined with perfective aspect, with imperfective aspect, and with habitual aspect. This being very common in languages in general, in TAM categories, to combine tense and aspect information. And then last we have mood, markers of the status of a proposition. Yes, and in the previous video I looked at 4 languages in the Pilbara region of Western Australia, 4 Ngayada languages. So that is 4 languages belonging to the Ngayada subgroup of the Pama-Nyungan language family. I still have Ngara and the Nyamal on the board here, which we looked at in the previous video. But I thought perhaps it could be interesting to bring Nyangumarta into the mix. Why? Well, in the northernmost Pilbara region, these 3 languages were neighboring languages in classical times. The different groups exchanged brides, and the languages influenced each other. So, we can tell that these languages are not closely related, for example, from the number of verb conjugations found here. So in Ngara and Nyamal, we have 2 conjugations each. They are labeled the 0 and L conjugation. In Nyangumarta, there are 4 verbal conjugations labeled ny, n, and Yes, and Nyangumarta belongs to the Marngo subgroup of Pama-Nyungan languages. But despite this, we can see that there are great similarities here. What I should probably point out is that these TAM categories do not have identical use in all languages. And that is the reason for the arrows here. But the similarities are great. So in all 3 languages, we find the present tense, the past tense combined with perfective and imperfective aspect. Ngara and Nyamal have a past tense combined with habitual aspect, which Nyangumarta does not. However, in Nyangumarta, this TAM category here is used for past tense and both for imperfective and habitual aspect. hence this arrow here. Perhaps people are wondering, by the way, what these capital V's are. Well, this is another way that we can tell that Nyangumarta is not closely related. Because in Nyangumarta we get a lot of vowel harmony, which we don't in these languages. So capital V means the same vowel as the last vowel in the stem. And this here is supposed to be L. Yes, now Nyangumarta has two main dialects, usually called coastal and inland. And it is a fact that they have a lot more vowel harmony in the coastal dialect. So perhaps that begs the question, in the inland dialect, what vowel would you get here in all these instances? Well, let's just say it's complicated. Like relationships are said to be on Facebook, complicated. It is complicated. And I don't want to go into that here and now. So, looking at these categories, continuing to look at these categories, note that in the previous video, among those 4 languages there, Ngara was the only language to have a remote past tam category. But actually, we find this in Nyangumarta as well. And Ngara was the only language of those 4 languages in the previous video still to have a present contrafactual and a past contrafactual. These tam distinctions being used in clauses that are negated. Note here that they have created a more symmetrical, shall we say, inventory of tam categories in Nyangumarta. Not only do they have a remote past, but they also have a remote future. And not only do they have present contrafactual and past contrafactual, they also have a remote contrafactual, which Ngara does not. When it comes to future, Ngara has a future tam category, but here these suffixes, endings, are used both to mark future tense and imperative mood, so to give orders. This is not the case in Nyangumarta, as you can see. They have a separate future tense and imperative mood. And in Nyamal, they feel that they don't need a future tense, possibly because there are 3 modal distinctions that you can use to talk about the future, which they share with Ngara, all 3 of them. The purposive, used to express what you think should happen or ought to happen, what you want to happen. We have the speculative, used to speculate about what might happen. And we have the so-called anticipatory, used to express certainty, that you are absolutely sure that certain things will take place in the future. Yes. Nyangumarta does not have the optative modal category, which we find in Ngara and Nyamal. It does not occur very often, but it is used to express that whatever the verb says, the verb expresses, that thing, that activity should be allowed to continue or to go on. The speaker thinks that it should be allowed to go on. Yes, so that's the optative. The prospective is only found in Nyamal, where an event is seen as an indivisible whole, as in a perfect. But this is the mirror image of the perfect. That's how Professor Alan Dench describes it, because using this TAM category, the speaker is placing himself or herself in a time before the event that is seen as an indivisible whole. In Nyangumarta, we find the category here that I here call hortative, used in, shall we call them, imperatives to more than one people, where the speaker is included. So let us do whatever. Let us do X. So as you can see, the Ngara and the Nyamal does not have that category. But in general, despite the languages being quite different, there is a whole lot of commonality when it comes to what TAM categories we find. Yes, this will be all for today, but as you know, I will be back. So, see you later.